you guys to get it. We need broadband, we also need housing, so we need really public ownership, management, and planning in several key industries, also manufacturing, in order to provide the infrastructure for greening our energy and our transportation and all that. We need to bring manufacturing back and manufacturing jobs back to this country, and it will require a whole, concerted and coordinated plan to make this happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that one for sure.
Yeah, because that always kills me, because it's like people seem like they have like half of that. They'll say, well, we will move to renewables, but in the meantime, like we have the oil lobby. They're never going to allow that to happen unless we nationalize it, because then they're gone pretty much overnight at that point.
Exactly, and it's kind of the same thing, about the war industry.
Mm-hmm.
That APAC needs to be reclassified as a what's it called?
Foreign
agent. Yes, so that they don't have the power to buy off our politicians and to determine policy. Yeah, for sure. Any other?
That was actually something I've read up on some of your literature and everything, but I was just kind of curious where the Green Party stance is, like specifically on campaign finance reform, because you mentioned the APAC and foreign influences.
Oh yeah.
That's something that's a really big concern to me, and I have family that lives overseas in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and one of the things that I appreciate the most about the system, as it described it to me, is that they have like just caps on candidates. You can't spend more than. So is that something that sounds like the Green Party?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, we have a whole kind of agenda to bring democracy to the United States of America, because right now we have the best democracy money can buy, and that's no democracy at all. So we want to get money out of politics. In the state of Maine, they have public funding of elections. We passed that in my home state in Massachusetts, and the Democratic Party, the Progressive Democratic Party, repealed it. We passed it as a voter referendum. Overwhelmingly, people want to get big money out and provide a public alternative so that candidates don't have to go on bended knee to big money and say, oh, please fund me, because when you do that, there's an implicit deal, even if it's not explicit, but you kind of owe, and you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, so it's a very toxic relationship. Even if you don't intend to, sell your soul, you kind of wind up doing that, and the system has done that. So we very much support public financing, limiting or eliminating altogether private financing of elections, either by candidates themselves, because the candidates, can buy, throw $1 billion into the election, they can buy the election for themselves, and that's not good either, for it to be their own money or for them to be raising the money to do it. We also call for closing the revolving door, because when you have people like the Secretary of Defense, Austin, going from, I think, Raytheon into the chair, the board of directors of Raytheon, then into managing Raytheon, as the Secretary of Defense, that's extremely corrupting too. You had Monsanto executives who rotated from Monsanto into the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, where they basically legalized GMOs under the watch of Monsanto. It's like, what's with that? Industries basically designing rules for themselves. You had the same thing with the Sackler family, writing basically their own permissions for opioids and for fentanyl, which then created this crisis. They basically bought their way to policy. You have the same thing with Boeing and the FAA undermining regulation of the airlines industry and putting people at risk for very shoddy airplane maintenance now and all kinds of problems like that. So we have to stop, we've got to close the revolving door as well as stopping the flow of money. Because right now people do not trust at all. Not only is the system corrupt, but people know it's corrupt. And so the trust in the recommendations of our various agencies, the trust is not there whatsoever. And that makes for kind of an ungovernable, society. It says in the Declaration of Independence that just power derives from consent of the governed. And if people don't trust their elected officials and their regulatory boards and Congress and the judiciary, really across the board, the levels of trust are completely in the tank right now. And you just can't have a society that works. Things just break down because we just don't have the glue of confidence and trust. So this has everything to do with getting money out of politics and cleaning house. We also call for reasonable ballot access rules right now, because right now the rules are written in order to keep choices off the table. In fact, the Democrats have announced, they actually had the gall to announce that they've hired an army of lawyers in order to throw candidates like us off the ballot and keep us out, which is why we have to collect more than the signatures that we need, because they'll be going through the lists one by one to try to get us thrown off the ballot. I don't know if you heard about what they did. They actually commit fraud, although it's not technically labeled fraud in a court of law. They have other names for it, but they've been found guilty of basically fraudulent actions to manipulate the political process. So in North Carolina in 2022, we ran Matthew Ho, who's served in Iraq and Afghanistan, finally quit when Obama was doing another surge. He quit in a very public way. He had been elevated to some position in the State Department and was part of, I think, the U.S. Embassy at the time. He very publicly quit, really denouncing the war machine. Anyhow, fast forward 20 years, he's now running, or he did run for Senate in North Carolina in 2022, and the Democrats were very concerned about that. They impersonated the Green Party, and they called people who had signed the petitions for Matt Ho. They called them saying they were the Green Party, asking people to please take their names off the petition. They decided.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Did you hear about that? And they happened to call the co-chair of the party.
Yeah.
Who recorded the conversation of the Democrats impersonating the Green Party, calling the chair of the Green Party to tell him to take his name off the petition. So that was later used in court, and they did kick Matt Ho off the ballot. They went to court, they got him on, but very late in the game, so it was really too late. They play these games.
Yeah.
This is what they do. They rely on these outrageous dirty tricks in order to throw their opponents off the ballot, because they can't meet us in the light of day and actually have a debate about these things.
Yeah.
They have to resort to their dirty tricks. They've also advertised now. We found them actually advertising for infiltrators into our campaign and into our ballot access drives. So we know they're out there and they're doing their darndest, but they are very much, in opposition to what the American people want right now. So, we think we have the moral authority to stand up and fight this, to fight the empire, to fight genocide, to fight, just the crashing and burning of our future and our democracy, for that matter. People talk about Donald Trump is going to bring fascism. I think we have fascism right now when the cops are attacking protesters, people in the street, people on campus, just brutally, these unprovoked attacks. I don't know if you've seen the footage, but it's pretty jaw-dropping what's going on now. And then there are 70 cop cities, like in Atlanta. Cop City is where they're converting this beautiful, pristine forest into like a 40-acre police academy, and they're going to destroy the forest and further militarize the police, and the community is in incredible, up in arms right now, trying to get it on the ballot. The Democrats are trying to prevent it from getting on the ballot because they know that they will lose if there's a referendum about this. And they are accusing the organizers, they murdered, one of the organizers, Tortuguita, yes, whose hands were up in the air, and when they were shot, yeah, it was really horrific. And many of the other organizers have been accused of domestic terrorism and threatened with very long-term jail sentences. This is what fascism looks like, when we've lost our right to speak, when standing up in opposition to a genocide, like the majority of the American people oppose, like the highest, governmental bodies in the world, the United Nations Security Council, General Assembly, the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, they all agree this is a genocide. But if you say that here, in this country, you are accused of anti-Semitism, which is ridiculous, it's nonsense, and they try to criminalize you, and they'll bash your head in, and they'll blacklist students, fire professors, it's just nonsense.
Yeah, because I saw the video of the cop going at you with the bike.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, oh my God, where was that at?
That was at
St. Louis.
Washington
Oh, okay.
University in St.
Yeah, that was
Louis.
insane.
Today was supposed to be our court day.
Yes, today was our court
It's been on
date.
my mind.
The police are now saying they're still investigating, so they haven't
Yeah.
filed charges yet. But then, once this happened, once they assaulted us, they then said that I was basically going to be charged with assault.
Yeah, I know. Well, then
What a
in
joke.
Bloomington, which is just like an hour south of here, that was where they had the police with sniper rifles on a clock tower. And
Yeah.
I knew people who were there who
Oh
were
my
like,
God.
there were maybe 30 anti-genocide people and then some Israel people who actually were being violent, but they weren't aimed at the Israel people. It was at just the encampment. So
Yes.
yeah, it was really bad.
It's unbelievable, and the violence is totally coming from the riot police who are coming in and
Yeah.
committing the riot, and from the, from the Zionist forces.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, fascism is here, and this kind of lesser evil voting just gives it free rein and
Yeah.
buys into their excuses. So, what I find very encouraging out here on the campaign trail is that people really get this, and people are standing up, and really, people who've never registered to vote before, are getting out to register right now because they think this is absolutely horrific, and there are so many people who are engaging. There's a real possibility, not only that we make an impact, but potentially even winning, because there are 3 pro-genocide candidates, and they could potentially split the pro-genocide, pro-war vote. There's only gonna be one of us, anti-war, anti-genocide, pro-worker, climate emergency. Only one such campaign is on track. Love Cornel West's voice, but he hasn't had experience organizing campaigns before. It's very hard to do it, first time out of the starting gate. And when we got, 42,000 signatures, he got, like 3,000, something like that. So he's not gonna be on the ballot. He'll be on as a write-in in some states, but you cannot be a write-in in some major states. So
Yeah.
he won't really make a dent. Same for Claudia de la Cruz, great campaign, similar agenda, but they do not have the experience and the capacity to be on the ballot in more than maybe a dozen, maybe 15 states, but mostly the small states without large electoral college votes. So you have to have, the capacity to actually challenge empire, or the mainstream media will not give you the time of day.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, we're gonna have one of us. So when you have 4 campaigns, splitting the vote 4 ways, you can win an election with as little as 26% of the vote. You have to have the plurality of the vote in order to win the majority of the electoral college. But the bottom line is, we could potentially get there. We're running 8% in Wisconsin, where we've had a little bit of press. To get from 8%, up to 26% is not such a big lift. Bernie Sanders percolated around at 2% for much of the primary until he broke through. So it's really an absolutely unprecedented election.
Yeah.
So, you know, having help on the ground to bring those petitions to, you know, to festivals and events. The Muslim community, there's not much of a Muslim community here, but there are some. I mean, there's tens of thousands of Muslims here, and they've been really organizing. And once they start bringing the petitions to their mosques, then they accumulate signatures really fast. Do you want to say anything about the drive, the petition drive?
Just that we need 25,000 ballot signatures by June 24th. That means we need to have
That's
those
in Illinois.
to coordinate it
That's
by
right,
the
25.
21st.
Yes, it's 37.
So that folks have the weekend to compile all of that for submission to the Board of Elections. We need to collect 50,000 raw signatures.
That's Illinois.
That's
Oh,
Illinois.
sorry.
Yeah, right, so it's
So
37.
it's 37
Yeah.
here.
Where-
Of course.
I forget where we are sometimes.
Yeah, yes,
That's
I
okay.
know.
It's 37.
It's constant.
It's 37,000 by July 1st.
And 74,000 raw. Or
Yeah.
we're pushing for 70,000 raw signatures to get that.
Yeah, so it's a lot of signatures. We have a jump start, right? Do you know what the numbers are? I think someone has, if I'm
Yeah,
not
so
mistaken.
20,000
I think there are
signatures.
20,000 already.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so it can definitely be done. In New York, we got 42,000 basically in about 10 days. There was just this huge mobilization and everybody was out. And if we could do 42,000 in 10 days, right now we have just a little under a month.
Yeah.
So we could get it done.
Question about
Yeah.
that. So for the petition for the signatures, would they have to be like all within our local area or just within like the state of Indiana?
It has to be in the state of Indiana. I have petitions right here. You have to, when you gather signatures, you have to ask them, are you willing to sign our petition? What county are you registered in?
Oh, yeah.
So,
There's a space in the upper right-hand corner for the county, and you can only collect signatures from that particular county.
Oh,
on that
Yeah.
petition.
Oh, yeah. So
So
there is
you
like there
carry
is
a
a
few.
local,
You carry a
Like,
few
yeah,
petitions.
so there is like a local element to it, but it's.
Oh,
also
thank you.
Yeah, and so
Right.
if you went to like a statewide event, and I would encourage you to see if there are any events, statewide events, fairs, festivals in the next couple weeks. And if there was a tabling fee, that's really helpful to get a table at those events, and collect signatures. You'll get people from all over the state, something like that, and you'll have to carry, county petitions from every state, and you lay them out on the table.
and we have a couple of on my Vigo County Green Party Facebook group, we're gathering signatures on Saturdays. We're starting at the Terre Haute Farmers Market, which is at the Meadows Shopping Center, and then we're going to, in the afternoon, going to a couple of festivals. This weekend is, the 6th Street Arts Festival, and then the big one, Indiana Special Olympics is this weekend.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great. It's the whole weekend?
It's a whole
Oh,
weekend.
that's great.
So there's going to be a lot of people from
Oh.
all over the state of
Oh, that's
Indiana.
huge. That's great. Yeah, and, if it's the Special Olympics, you can always tailor your stop line. Stop line is how you get people to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So often it's just, and personally, I don't start with, are you registered to vote, or are you a voter here? Because that often turns people off. But if you start with something like, do you want to get another choice for president on the ballot? Or if you're at the Special Olympics,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to have quality services for the disabled, across the country? Do you want to improve quality services?
Yes.
Or education?
Or,
Or-
do you want to legalize cannabis and have a $25 an hour minimum wage? Like,
Yes,
working
those
class
two.
people without
Yes,
health
yes,
insurance need options.
Yes. Or do you want to have, free health insurance?
Yeah.
Those are really great stopper lines, and then you can just rake them in. And the rule of thumb is don't spend any longer talking to people than you absolutely need to. So once you've asked the question and they're interested, as they, and then you say this is to get a presidential candidate on the ballot who will be working for that, and has a track record for it. You really don't need to say more than that. And then as they're starting to sign, say, are you a registered voter, you know, in what county are you in? And that's when you can find out, once they've already engaged, like, wow, I could get, you know, legalized weed, and
It's helpful to go out with more than one person.
Yeah.
Like Jill said, you don't wanna get consumed in conversation. This is not the educational aspect of the campaign, this
Yeah.
is to gain ballot access, this is
Right.
about democracy and having choices on the ballot.
And best to tell them that if you sign this petition, you are under no obligation to vote for them, you're just getting their
Good point.
name on the
Yes,
ballot.
Yes, exactly.
Or, can you help me out? I just need 30 seconds of your time if you could sign this as a registered voter. If they're really in a hurry,
Yeah,
and you're really going for it. And you can get, there's like a span, like, you can get 5 to 25 signatures in an hour, the mean is about 10 to 12.
and once you kind of get your stopper line that you're comfortable with, you can really get more. You always wanna go in a place where there's a lot of foot traffic. Foot traffic is really critical. If there's a lot of people going by and you've got a good stopper line, you can get
Oh, thank you.
20, 30 in an hour even.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Yeah,
But yeah, cause I mean, I think it's, if there was ever gonna be a time for a third party candidate, cause I mean, I've been paying attention really since 2012. Except for a
Right.
third party then, but I mean, it's like now, it's never been so obvious that there's this massive issue that we all have a big problem with, that we're just aiding and abetting a genocide. And it's just getting worse and worse in our global ramifications, and all three of those
yes.
candidates support it, or at least aren't really challenging it. They have rhetoric, but that's really it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, Joe Biden says he opposes this, but he has the power to stop it
Yeah.
with a phone call, and he refuses to do that, and he really gives Netanyahu a green light to do whatever he wants to do, no questions asked.
Well, and even some people like that I work with, for instance, who are at least traditionally conservative, they like Donald Trump, but even they've said, wait a minute, how come we've lost now 5 United States service members to this, when we had the 2 that died in an operation on an Iranian ship, and we had the 3 in Jordan. And now I think people are starting to even come around to question, well, why did Donald Trump greenlight everything they did during his term, and Joe Biden, and it's kind of come to this point where people are starting to.
Exactly, and, you know, Trump has basically said that Biden is not being aggressive enough,
Yeah.
you know? And Lindsey Graham calls for nuking them all, you know? And this could, you know, in fact, this could go nuclear,
Yeah.
because if you're committing basically an act of war against Iran, which is what Israel did by bombing their embassy in Syria, that's an act of war, and it's not hard to imagine how Iran could get pulled in. There's nothing that Israel would love better, you know, and things are really exploding right now with Lebanon as well. You know, on many fronts, people in Jordan have been, you know, clamoring to tear up the treaty, the peace treaty, you know, so this is dangerous for Israelis as much as it's dangerous for Palestinians, and really for everyone in the Middle East, but it goes beyond the Middle East, because if Iran gets brought in, Iran and Russia are in a military alliance. Russia obviously has nuclear weapons, so does Israel, so does the United States. A single nuclear armed submarine carries the equivalent of 5,000 Hiroshima bombs, which is more than enough to put us all into nuclear winter. So nuclear war is not okay anywhere. It's not okay to have even a limited exchange of nuclear weapons, because we all starve. You know, when you see that mushroom cloud, that's debris going into the upper atmosphere where it doesn't weather down. So it's there for years, if not decades. And, you know, this is why the dinosaurs, you know, kind of went extinct, because they had essentially a nuclear event, but it was a meteor that kicked up all that dust. And large creatures died out, you know, that was the end of the reptiles, you know. And so we don't want to go there. And our very reckless war criminal leaders, you know, they're basically doing the service for the weapons industry, and they're not really concerned about what the consequences of these weapons are. What we, you know, advocate is what's been adopted by the UN, which is that all nuclear weapons should be abolished. That would be a really important safeguard, because we're butting up against, you know, nuclear war in 3 years in the world right now. This not only impoverishes us, it consumes half of our budget, So we don't have the money for things that we need here, like housing and healthcare and education and ending student debt. Oh, that's another great stopper line, by the way.
Yeah.
Would you like to get rid of student debt and medical debt? But, you know, we're being impoverished by the extent, you know, the cost of this is just staggering. And we're not benefiting from it at all. We're all really being endangered by it. So, you know, there's very good reason for us to stand up. And I think a lot of people are starting to get this right now, that these wars, this endless series of disastrous wars, are not helping us, and they're not helping our standing in the world. They're not creating a more stable world. They're contributing to the climate disaster. How do you feel the climate disaster here, by the way? Are you guys subject to drought and heat waves? What's going on in Indiana?
We've been actually studying geography and sustainability at
Oh,
LSU,
really?
so this is kind of like in my wheelhouse.
Oh, good.
We are in our transitional period in the climate model, so we're having incredible rains during the spring. So the mud and erosion issues are getting really bad around here, and then we're getting hit with periodic droughts that will begin in about a month.
Oh, man. So you get a lot of heat during the summer and it gets dry?
Yeah, it gets pretty dry through July, but it's also so Indiana is traditionally like a kind of swampy area.
Oh, really?
And so we're used to getting like being fairly hot, but then also fairly wet.
Wow.
And now the summers are starting to dry out a lot more.
Yeah.
But we're getting hit with too much rain during the early spring. And our snowfall is declining as well, which is a potential threat to our groundwater.
Where does your water come from? Is it?
A lot of our water comes from groundwater sources throughout the state, as well as some reservoirs. And then we're very dependent on the spring rains that would traditionally run through the summer, which are now drying up in the summer, and then also our snowfall, which we've been in a drought pretty much every winter for the last 5 years.
So are you drawing
Plus,
down?
it's not helping out that we are also dealing with a carbon capture sequestration plant, which we'll be going to later today.
Yeah.
And then there's something called the LEAP District.
What?
LEAP District. Indiana Economic Development Corporation is proposing a economic development district. It's in Lebanon, Indiana, which is just outside of Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's actually my hometown.
The problem is, in order for them to have enough water, they have to tap into an aquifer that's in Lafayette, West Lafayette, just to send it down to Lebanon. And a lot of people are not happy about that.
So if anybody has any burning questions, we have time for that. We've got kind of an evolving situation that we need to address.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm good. I got
I totally understand.
all the information.
And do you have a place to plug into for continuing the, because you need to get support, you'll have questions, you wanna download petitions.
Are you planning to go to the hearing a little later?
I actually can. I got a thing in Indianapolis I gotta go to, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right, please connect with me. I will plug you in. We have I don't know if you've used WhatsApp before, but it's kind of our on-the-ground action feed where people are going to share where they're going, and we can't just wait for the weekend
Right.
Yeah.
to collect signatures. We need about 2,100 signatures every day, which is, it's
A lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So we really need to get out there every single day, every moment that we have to dedicate to this effort, because it's just so important, as you all know.
And if you have, other friends who feel like you do about genocide, about climate change, about drought, about the carbon sequestration, if you can get other people to carry petitions too, that's way more powerful than getting people to sign them, if you can actually get people to carry them.
Yeah.
people who are as upset about the state of the world as we are. There are lots of us out there. It's all about getting more people.
And inviting them to be part of this, like, this is our movement. This is all about, it's what we do with this moment, it's up to us.
And you can also check in with the Indiana Green Party, greenpartyin.com is for our state party.
And you don't need to remember anything, like. if
And
you go
it's
to
on
Jill's-
it's on that brochure
Oh,
that I
gotcha,
gave
yeah.
you
And
too.
on Jill's website, we have a ballot access map, so if you click on Indiana, you're gonna have point of contact. Pluto Brand, the chair, did a great video on how to collect signatures and how to fill this stuff out. And then you
Yeah.
now know Sarah and you know me, so we'll be well connected, and if you need anything at all, just call me or text me. Yeah, it was really good to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, no, I loved it.